Welcome back, everyone, to this special bonus episode of the Fronczak Files. I'm Paul Jack Fronczak.
And I'm Tracy Hastings.
Even though we're on a short break between seasons, we didn't want to leave you without something to dig into. So today, we're taking a closer look at two figures whose life stories weave through the same time and places as the mysteries we've been unraveling. Alice Swain and Lorraine Fountain. Two women we have discussed on several episodes in Season 1, and two women who have ignited so many questions and conversations from our listeners. While these two women live very different lives, both of their timelines contain intriguing details that raise questions about how, or if they might be connected, to the larger mystery surrounding the Paul Fronczak kidnapping.
We've laid out their histories side by side, looking at where they lived, the people they were connected to, and the circumstances that surrounded their lives. By comparing their timelines, we might uncover important overlaps, or at least patterns worth paying attention to.
Okay, listeners, get ready to take your notes and join our investigation. You ready, Tracy?
I'm ready, Jack. Let's do it.
Let's get our shovels and start digging. So, Tracy, way back when that tipster first reached out to me and mentioned that they might know the real Paul, and they made it tough. I had to jump through hoops, and we had to keep discovering things. They wouldn't just give us the answer. But a name that came up was Lorraine Fountain. It was brought up that she was the one that had Kevin when Kevin was growing up in Michigan. So a lot of listeners have asked, who is this person, and what do we know about her? So I think now's a good time to actually dive into this timeline. What do you think?
Yeah, I think our listeners have really shown an interest in Lorraine as an individual, who she was, what she was like, where she came from, what her personality might be like, as much as we are curious about her as well. And we haven't shared everything that we know about Lorraine throughout the season. And I think that's, any good investigation doesn't reveal all of their information, right? We keep some things close to the vest. But we thought while we're on hiatus, this might be a neat little episode to drop for our listeners, give them a little bit more information about what we do know.
And also a good reason for doing this is because someone out there might hear something or remember something that could help move this investigation along.
Exactly. And so, though there are things that we have kept under wraps and we haven't told our audience about some things that we do know, there comes a point, right, where it's sort of like collaboration is the next step. So if we put the details out there, you never know. Someone might recognize something might seem familiar. And any tip is a good one, and we want to follow up on them all.
Leave no stone unturned. Cast the widest net that brings the most results.
And that's just one of the few slogans we have around here.
We should be selling T-shirts.
I think that's next. I think we need to do that. All right. So
let's dive into this timeline.
Yeah, let's dive into it. So here's the timeline for Lorraine Frances Arnold Fountain. So what we know about Lorraine Fountain: she was born Lorraine Frances Arnold on November 4th, 1921. Her parents were Frank Raymond Arnold, born in 1880, and his second wife, Blanche E. Winston, who was born in 1904. Francis Raymond Arnold died on September 28th of 1921 at the age of 40 in Chicago. So died about 2 months, 6 weeks or so before Lorraine was actually born.
Okay, starting off without a dad.
So what do we know about that? We know that children who grew up without a good parental father influence tend to have some difficulties in their life. So setting the scene. The team's also been able to uncover that in the 1930 census for Reeder, Michigan, Lorraine, who's 8 years old at the time, is listed in the census as living with her mother, who now goes by the name of Blanche Palmer, and Blanche's husband, Carl Palmer, and along with her 3 children with Carl, which make them Lorraine's half-siblings, Robert, Carl Jr., and Geraldine, who were 4, 3, and a newborn at the time. What we see here is that that Lorraine's mother remarried probably pretty quickly and then started another family, and that Lorraine was now a part of this family residing in Reeder, Michigan, having been born and spent a lot of the early part of her childhood in Chicago. We're going to jump ahead about a decade or so to April 15th, 1940. Lorraine is 19 years old, and she marries a man named Alex Bowers in Marion, Michigan. So she's still hanging out in the Michigan location. And in the census for 1940, she's reported as living with her husband Alex and his parents, who are Joseph and Julia Bowers. There's no children listed at this time in that census that we were able to find. So Lorraine's criminal history, as far as we can tell, begins on or around August 10th of 1945 in Lansing, Michigan.
She was how old at this point?
So she was born in 1921. So she would have been 23, 24. But there could have been something happening prior to this at first, when we were first able to discover criminal activity. We just haven't been able to find anything. It seems like sort of a late age, actually, to start criminal behavior. In your early 20s, typically, this is not where you start. I think most profilers would tell you for criminal profiling that people don't typically go from doing no crimes to then doing something like check forgery.
And wasn't Al Capone running Chicago in his 20s?
Yeah, absolutely. So and he didn't start doing that right out of the gate. He started very young with criminal behavior. So I think it's probably safe for us to assume that there were other criminal elements to her life happening prior to this first known arrest. But this is the first time that we see anything in the newspaper or confirming to us that she did have a run-in with the law. And so on August 10th of 1945, she was employed at the C.J. Goodsell Potato Company.
You can't make that up.
Right? And apparently she was also employed alongside someone who she referred to in the article as her sweetheart. As far as we know, she was still married to Alex Bowers at this time. But she was arrested on charges of check forgery while living in a federal trailer camp along North Grand River Avenue in Lansing, Michigan. And that she told the police in her confession that she stole 8 blank checks from her company, forged them in order to help her sweetheart pay his alimony payments.
From there, we move into?
Yeah, from there, not too far later, just a little over a year later.
We're looking at October of 1946, the State Journal, Lansing, Michigan. Lorraine is arrested along with her boyfriend, Robert Yunker, for stealing $250 worth of linens and clothes from the American Laundry Company, where they both worked. Talk about an inside job.
No kidding. You know, she's starting to sort of establish this habit of hooking up with men that she's working with and then getting into criminal activity with them.
Wow.
So we're starting to establish this pattern of being a part of that criminal element and living in that sort of lifestyle.
Kind of a grifter con man.
Yep, for sure. And then finally, in 1947, we're able to find documentation that shows that her divorce from Alex Bowers finally goes through in Ingham, Michigan on June 30th. Moving along in the timeline, we next come up to 1948, July 8th. We know that Lorraine is paroled in Port Huron from the Detroit House of Corrections, presumably paroled from her arrest from stealing the linens from the laundry company. That's what we're presuming, is that she was arrested and incarcerated as a result of that criminal activity and then paroled to Port Huron at that time.
She was arrested in Port Huron, Michigan, for violating her parole, living in Detroit, and returned to the Detroit House of Corrections.
Yeah, so part of her parole was that she needed to remain in Port Huron, which is where she was paroled to. But she was found to be actually living in Detroit, which was a violation of her parole. And so she was returned back to prison as a result of her parole violation.
And that was on October 9th. A few days later, October 30th, she escapes from jail.
I mean, what are we talking about here?
Is she
right?
Papillon? Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, she was literally in jail for a couple of weeks and escapes. So I don't know. We don't have a lot of information about the facility where she was being detained, what level of security it was. A safe guess would be it's not a high level of security for someone with her arrest record for petty theft, essentially. Probably not a maximum security facility. However,
wasn't like Shawshank Redemption or
right.
Escape from Alcatraz.
Probably not that hard to escape from, but just the fact that she was brazen enough to do it, to escape from prison. Like, really? Wow. That takes a lot of guts.
And a lot of these crimes are crimes of thinking, planning, and just, kind of kind of ballsy.
Absolutely.
So we're starting to form a personality type.
Yeah, we're starting to see someone not afraid to go against the grain, not afraid to break the law, not afraid to thumb their nose at the legal system.
Yeah.
Then that's really the point of us doing this timeline, is to help establish for our listeners that this is, her first violation of the law was not raising a stolen baby. There was a long history here, and we still have a lot more to cover.
Yeah.
So this was the next occasion that we find Lorraine. Is the team. We all thought this was sort of, we shook our heads at this one when we found this. So on May 2nd of 1949, there's a newspaper article which we will show to the listeners who are watching this on YouTube, that there's a paper in the paper. It was this article appeared because it was such an unusual thing that happened. So Lorraine was living in Wytheville, Michigan at the time, and she attended a baseball game at Briggs Stadium in Detroit with 50,000 other attendees. And who does she run into at the baseball game?
Let me guess. Her parole officer.
Yes, and I think that the whoever wrote the article also found it as much of a head shaker as we did. Like, wow, okay, dang.
Yeah. So what happens next, Tracy?
So next we find her in April of 1950. She's listed in the federal census as being an inmate in the Detroit House of Corrections at the Northville, Michigan location. So this is where she was sent after being rearrested and sent back to prison. This is where they placed her. I've done a little bit of research on the Northville, Michigan location for at that time, and that was a slightly elevated level of security, is my understanding, since she did have a history of escaping.
So then we're looking at 1959, 9 years later, we're still back in April. On April 10th, Lorraine was arrested in a vice raid at the Lorraine Hotel in Chicago, along with Nick Monaco, the elevator operator, Roger Perrault, the night clerk, and Stephen Procius, a cab driver who took the arresting officer to the hotel as part of the sting operation. You can't make this up.
No, you can't. And remember when we first found this article and we were like, Lorraine was arrested at the Lorraine Hotel?
Yes.
Wow, that's a odd coincidence for sure. That was the first thing I think that jumped out at us. And then the second thing is that she's now no longer in Michigan. She's back in Chicago.
Now, was she using Lorraine as her first name before the Lorraine Hotel bust?
Yes, she was.
Okay.
But of course, we don't have evidence to prove it, so we haven't included it necessarily in the timeline that she did go by other names. But we're only using things that we can support through either census records, newspaper articles, things that we can put our hands on, not necessarily secondhand information from other people.
Just the facts, ma'am.
That's what we're trying to put out here. There's a lot of other things we could put in here, but we've chosen to just stick with what we know.
Yes.
So, and some of these last names that we're seeing in association with this arrest do have some connections to the Chicago mob. Not necessarily those individuals themselves, but their family last names do have affiliations. And this was a set-up sting operation. So this was absolutely planned out by the police and all these people taken into custody.
Not just the police, the vice.
Yeah. I mean, when you're bringing in vice, ooh.
And they usually targeted one or two groups, and that was... So I think we're getting a picture of what's happening here.
Yes, though we have a bit of a gap here between 1950 and 59 as far as official records. I think we don't know exactly how long she was in jail as well after she was rearrested, after being spotted by her parole officer. Uncertain how long she actually spent in jail, but clearly she was out by April of 1959 and then rearrested again. And then the next significant event that we can find that sort of plugs into here is the kidnapping of Paul Fronczak on April 27th.
And Tracy, let me just go back for a second here. So Vice was known for arresting mostly what?
Prostitutes. Prostitution, busting up prostitution rings. I didn't know there was going to be a quiz, by the way. I hope I did okay. Okay,
you did
good.
amazing. I'm just trying to give the listeners an idea of what's happening here.
Yeah.
They're at a hotel. We have a vice bust. And back then, it was no secret that in order to work in a outfit connected hotel, you have to be working for the outfit.
Sure.
And this is a vice bust in a outfit connected hotel.
Absolutely. In the town that we're
Theoretically.
right. And it's in the right location as well. So we've got a tie to illegal underground behavior that requires a vice raid. We know what the vice team typically goes after and where they go after it. And all those boxes are checked.
Yeah. All right. What do we have next?
The next thing we drop in here is April 27th, 1964, the kidnapping of Paul Joseph Fronczak from Michael Reese Hospital in Chicago.
What a sad day that was.
A day that, continues to reverberate through history.
Yes. Daily in my life.
Absolutely. And I thought it was important to put that in here for reference for our viewers and listeners to see this is what had happened as far as Lorraine's life went prior to the abduction of the baby. And then we can see what happens after and how things might sort of line up. So what we see next is just sort of general information of what we're able to find out about Lorraine at this time. Different addresses, locations based on census records, city directories, these type of things. So in October of 1967, she's living in Lake City, Michigan. In 1989, she is living in Manton, Michigan. In 1993, she's still at the same address, 7505 East 12th Road in Manton, Michigan. She remains at this address through 1996. And then on June 25th, 2004, Lorraine dies in Cadillac, Michigan at the age of 82.
And Tracy, who else was living in Manton, Michigan?
Kevin Beatty.
And that would be?
That would be Paul Joseph Fronczak.
Yes.
So we can definitely, and we know that he was living with her in that late 60s period. That much has been able to be established. And they lived in close proximity to one another even after they no longer lived at the same address. They did stay close to each other.
And Lorraine was the person that raised Kevin. Kevin thought that that was his mom and that his father was a football player who just left when he was young. So how did Kevin get the name Kevin Ray Beatty, when his mom was supposedly Lorraine Fountain?
That's a great question, and one that, we struggled with, of course, as we were going through this, trying to figure out where did that come from? Are there any, to the point of even looking through all professional football rosters, looking for a professional football player who would have had the last name of Beatty, and unable to come up with anything. Which then, of course, all right, we went down that path and didn't get anything. So that's clearly not the right answer. So next up, what do we do next? How do we figure this out? So a couple of interesting points after Lorraine passed. So in 2020, WGN News out of Chicago, when the story broke that the real Paul Fronczak had been located, there was news footage, and it was also a newspaper article where the article stated that Kevin's stepbrother gave an interview to WGN, unsure of the stepbrother, who exactly that is, because technically Lorraine Fountain did have a son, and technically he would be considered Kevin's stepbrother because they were not biologically related. So the news reporter, my theory is, used the title stepbrother for the person that they interviewed because technically it was a stepbrother relationship after discovering what they discovered about Kevin's true identity. But the stepbrother gave an interview to WGN where he's quoted as saying about his mother, quote, that she had been dating a doctor in Chicago around that time frame for unknown reasons. She quickly left the city and moved to Arkansas for a year before returning with a baby known as Kevin Beatty.
So what do you think happened in Arkansas?
Well, when you see Arkansas, you think, what's in Arkansas? Like, what would have taken her there? Immediately, all the questions start, right? What's in Arkansas? Why would Lorraine have went there? There's no history of her having ever gone to Arkansas that we've been able to find before this. And then coming back with the baby and family members being aware of this begs the question, doesn't it? What's Arkansas got to do with this?
And also, to me, I think of Arkansas, I think off the grid, out of the media. No one's following anybody to Arkansas,
Exactly.
at least
And
not in the 60s, 70s.
sure.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, you don't think of Arkansas as a hot spot for anything at that point in time, but what have we uncovered, however, in our search?
Once again, it goes back to the Chicago outfit.
Yeah, we've been able to discover that apparently Hot Springs, Arkansas, the 30s, 40s, 50s, and into the early 60s was a hotbed of activity for organized crime in general. That bosses from various cities would meet there. It was considered neutral ground. No hits were done while people were in Hot Springs on vacation. But we do know that there's a deep history of mob affiliation in the Hot Springs, Arkansas area. So that was our first initial tie, how we tied this sort of together. Okay, Lorraine's criminal history, what we're surmising that she was arrested for on more than one occasion, and wow, here she is going to Arkansas, a hotbed of organized crime.
Yeah, nicely put. So from there, we head into...
we fast forward to 2021, when you and Alex, your co-author for your books,
my friend,
and your friend, who were doing interviews with people who were close to the case. And this was, I believe, an interview that was given anonymously. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a source close to Lorraine. And this person talked with Alex and me regarding a visit with Lorraine in Michigan in the early 70s. They first became aware of Kevin when he was about 7 years old at this time. And Lorraine told the source that Kevin was her biological child. No further explanation was given. And we all know that Kevin was not her child.
And this is a very reliable source, one that we are not going to name for our own reasons, but the source is impeccable.
Yes. So that everything that we're covering adds up to it. It's painting a pretty definitive picture of what we believe happened.
Yeah, it's definitely helping to frame it for sure. I think for our listeners and our viewers about, during the course of season 1, I think that we were, saying we were dropping sort of hints and breadcrumbs along the way that we had this information. And this is what was helping us to formulate our hypothesis. So here it is for all of you to take in and chew on, evaluate, and come to your own conclusion and see what you think.
The path to identifying Alice as a person of interest wasn't straightforward. It began with a tip from a source who has asked to remain partially anonymous. We will call them Monica, the West Coast private investigator, at their request.
This source reported watching the Lost Sons documentary, and as a result, began to dig into the story using resources at their disposal that were unavailable to Jack and his team at the time.
Key points for this source: Lorraine was never identified as the kidnapper by eyewitnesses who have been shown her photos. The WGN broadcast that referenced a key detail: a stepbrother of Kevin Ray Beatty's claimed that Lorraine had been dating a doctor in Chicago around that time. For reasons that remain unclear, she abruptly left the city, spent a year in Arkansas, and returned with a baby who became known as Kevin Beatty. One logical reason for the new name was that the kidnapper had the last name Beatty. She claimed the baby as her own, obtaining legally identifying documents before handing him off to Lorraine Fountain.
And that segues into the birth certificate question. And we've had viewers ask this question about Kevin's birth certificate. We are unable to obtain a copy of his official birth certificate, as no one on our team is next of kin. We also know that Kevin's next of kin will not provide us with this information. So this requires us to hypothesize just a little bit. So the hypothesis that we put forth is that when baby Paul was kidnapped from Chicago, potentially taken to Arkansas, and at that time was taken to the clerk's office for whatever county he happened to be in at the time, and whoever had him reported his delivery as a home delivery, which would have allowed the kidnapper to appear in the county courthouse with a baby in arms and giving a date, time, and place for the delivery and obtaining a legal birth certificate. In Kevin's obituary, his date of birth is given as March 14th, 1964, which we know that the real Paul's birthday was actually April 26th, 1964. So we've got a bit of a discrepancy there as far as dates. So, of course, the next question that we ask is, what's significant about March 14th? Why would somebody do that with a baby's date of birth? They definitely knew this child was born in April of 64, but chose to March birthday instead. So when we look at the delivery records of Paul Joseph Fronczak, he weighed 9 pounds 2 ounces at birth, and this is an incredibly big newborn for 1964. This is before prenatal vitamins, a lot of intensive prenatal care. Women were smoking and drinking and doing all those type of things during pregnancy, and actually advised by their OBGYNs to do so at times. So different time and place. This is an unusually large child to be delivering. And typically babies who have moms who are drinking and smoking through pregnancy are small. So if Kevin was taken to Arkansas immediately after the kidnapping and a birth certificate was going to be obtained pretty quickly after this, he could have appeared to be 6 or 8 weeks old, given his size at that time. And the kidnapper might have had the wherewithal to realize that somebody looking at the baby might question, is this baby a newborn? Was this baby just born a couple of days ago?
From there, we began piecing together Alice's timeline, her birth and age at the time of the kidnapping, upbringing in Chicago, her early marriage and her time in Arkansas, as well as her striking resemblance to the composite sketches of the kidnapper. Each of these details brings us closer to understanding how her life might intersect with one of the most baffling mysteries in American history.
All right, let's dive into Alice Swain's timeline. Here's another young lady who went by several last names. We were able to squeeze them all in this one, however. Her timeline, what we know about Alice, is a little less complex than what we know about Lorraine. She did fly a little bit more under the radar as far as we can tell. So we've provided what we are able to prove with documentation, with legal documentation. So Alice Estella Swain was born in Chicago, Illinois on August 31st, 1935, to Remy Lewis Swain and Teresa Catalano, and she was the youngest of their 7 children.
Then we moved to May 13th of 1946. Remy Lewis Swain dies in Chicago at the age of 53. Alice is 10 years old.
So we have a parallel there, right? Lorraine's father died before she was, or shortly after she was born, and Alice was also left fatherless at the age of 10.
Yeah, funny how it's always the age of 10.
That's a pivotal age, apparently. Things happen to kids at 10.
Yeah, it's uncanny.
It's sort of strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so the 1950 census, which is the most recent census that we have access to, it's the one that's been most recently released by the Federal Census Bureau for public viewing. In the 1950 census, Alice is living with her mother and 3 of her siblings on Lincoln Avenue in Chicago. Her mother is listed as keeping house, while her sister Margaret, who's 27 at the time, is listed as working as a stenographer. Her sister Juanita, who's 25 at the time, is working as a wrapper for a food company. And her brother Warren, who's 18 at the time, is listed as doing bench work at a metal factory. So what we're seeing here is Alice appears to be in school at the time, and that her siblings are working outside of the home in order to support them.
Mm-hmm. And from there, we moved to 1953, Lakeview High School. Alice is a student located at 4015 North Ashland Avenue in Chicago.
And the photo that we have displayed, that is a photograph from the Lakeview High School yearbook.
Then we move into 1954, February 4th. Alice Estrella Swain is married to Billy Ray Beatty in Chicago. Billy Ray Beatty, born 20th of July 1933 in Blytheville, Arkansas. He and his father both worked as garbage men according to the 1950 federal census for Bowen, Arkansas. So now we're into Arkansas.
So here's an Arkansas connection. There's the Beatty connection and the Arkansas connection. And as a side note, what do we know about sanitation departments and their affiliation with the outfit.
Oh, just because you watch The Sopranos, you think you know everything.
I thought you'd be proud of me for pulling that reference in.
I am. That was very, very good.
For making that connection.
Yes.
So, we know this historically that the mob does tend to be involved in the sanitation worker area of
City
cities.
jobs, right?
Absolutely.
City jobs.
And
Yeah.
so, though there's nothing definitive there, it's a piece of information to put out
Just
there that may or
theoretically
may
putting it
not.
out there.
Absolutely. Let the listener make their own conclusions from that.
We're just spitballing. What happens next, Tracy?
So we move forward, about a year and a half or so to December of 1955. Alice and Billy's first child, a daughter, is born in Blytheville, Arkansas.
From there, we move into 1956. We're at 417th South 20th Street. Alice is living at this address in Blytheville, Arkansas, with Billy, who worked for United Van Lines. Other Beatty family members are shown in the city directory, including Billy's mother, who is listed as a nurse.
Interesting, right? So
extremely interesting.
We have Alice's mother-in-law listed as a nurse as her occupation. I don't think we need to say much more about that, probably.
There are no coincidences.
No.
We're not reaching here.
No. So, if you have a connection to someone who knows how hospitals work, who understands the flow, the process, who may even have the right outfit,
except for a hat, nurse's cap,
which we know that that wasn't that the kidnapper wasn't wearing the proper nurse's head cover. However, the rest of the outfit looked authentic enough that people didn't question the kidnapper being in the facility. So this is another red flag that went up for us as a research team, a connection to healthcare.
A pretty good size flag.
So on April 26, 1957, Alice's mother, Teresa Catalano Swain, passes away. And Alice is listed in her obituary as Alice Beatty. So she is still married, apparently legally at this time, and still using the Beatty last name.
And excuse me, you said April 26th.
Yes, which
That's
is also
the day Paul was born.
Of Paul Joseph Fronczak's birthday.
Wow. So that takes us down to May 22nd of 1963. Wisconsin Rapids Daily Tribune. Article about Alice's brother Robert Swain, born 1927, being arrested for stealing $15,000 from a jewelry store in Milwaukee, along with his niece. Family criminal history.
Yeah, it just screams that the family is dabbling in crime. Again, this is something that we were able to find proof of in a newspaper article showing that this arrest had taken place. It's the first time that we see her sort of coming close to being caught up in law enforcement. But having a brother who is stealing that kind of money at that time indicates that she might not have fallen far from that tree.
And $15,000 back in 1963.
That's a lot of money.
That's like
a lot
$5 billion now, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
The way prices are.
No kidding. I mean, that's a huge amount of money for that time. And so, that's not petty theft anymore. That's up there. That's grand larceny. So that's a big, heavy duty crime that we can tie her family members to.
And he wasn't really a young guy. He was in his 40s when he did this.
Yes. So we can, again, assume, as we have said before, people think the word assume is a dirty word, but we do a lot of it because that's how you come up with different paths of thinking, different ways of putting the facts together. And so assuming that this is not the first time that he stole anything. You don't start stealing in your 40s and start out at $15,000 from a jewelry store.
And I apologize. He wasn't in his 40s. He was very late 30s.
Still, it seems an unusual age to start a criminal career.
And like you said earlier, you don't start at that age.
Right. You don't start with that crime. You build from there. Criminals do not immediately start out with, I'm going to go knock over.
Unless there's an exception, like if you're Walter White from Breaking Bad, and you start a little bit later.
It's not impossible, but
it's like a one-off. Say my name.
Right. Right. So, moving forward to 1966, on May 22nd of that year, we see Billy Ray Beatty remarrying. So that's our indication that he and Alice were divorced at some point between this date and the death of Alice's mother in 1957. So somewhere in there, between her death, her mother's death, and his remarriage, there was a divorce that happened. We are unable to find documentation for that. It's entirely possible that there was no legal divorce. I mean, I think that we can even include that in there, that if you got people that are willing to break the law, and would they go the proper channels to dissolve marriages before they remarried? Hard to say.
And maybe something happened a couple of years prior, back in 1964, that caused a discrepancy in that relationship.
Exactly, which could have led to the relationship falling apart.
Yeah.
And at this time, we know that their daughter, Teresa Beatty, is a student at West Memphis High School near Blytheville, Arkansas. So we can place her daughter still at the time in Arkansas, though we technically cannot place Alice there. We know that her daughter is there and in high school.
And if you have a daughter who's in high school, chances are you're not far away.
You would think.
Yeah. So also in that time, between 70 and 74, we have a marriage, don't we?
Yes, she remarried.
Looks like to Joseph A. Quinlisk.
Yes.
No official marriage or divorce records have been found. To this date, Alice is mentioned in a Quinlisk family obituary as Joseph's wife.
That's the only solid proof that we have that she was married to him. Again, if she had never legally divorced Billy Ray Beatty, she wouldn't, of course, have been able to obtain a legal marriage license to marry Mr. Quinlisk. So, and there's also no official divorce records for them either. Though we know that further down the line, Alice marries again. So, but unable to find the paperwork to prove that there were actual legal marriages or divorces. So Teresa is Alice's daughter. So on September 18th of 1974, Teresa gives birth to Alice's grandson, who is stillborn in Chicago, and she names him Kevin.
Ooh. That's a heavy one.
So though Kevin is, so Dungus it has a lot of Irish affiliation with that last name. And Kevin is a common Irish name. Also, when you look at this in context, it seemed like an interesting choice to name a stillborn baby.
Yeah.
Take from that what you will.
Okay. So we're moving now to 1979.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a marriage to Richard Thomas Kelly, born in 1941 in Chicago.
So she's in Chicago and marrying Mr. Kelly, who is a little bit younger than her. That's the only information we have on them. So, and then we move forward to 1986. On October 19th, Alice Swain Beatty Quinlisk Kelly dies at 51 years old in Chicago.
Wow.
So again, like we mentioned, our information on Alice is a little, there's less that we've been able to recover about her at this point. The team, we have no doubt that there is other things that do exist as far as Alice goes. A lot of it is going to have to be boots on the ground for us as a team, because there is so many records that aren't digitized yet and not available online. There's a lot of stuff available online, but not everything. And so hopefully our plan is at some point to organize a trip and for us to go to Arkansas and do knock on doors and talk to people.
Just like when CeCe Moore and her team went to Atlantic City and they found things that we never would have found.
Right.
Things that documented Jack and Jill and family events and things like that. So in microfiche, libraries, actually going through the papers they had back then, it just needs to be done.
And a lot of the things that are happening now with digitizing records, it's all done voluntarily. So these historical societies, county clerks' offices, libraries, they need volunteers to help them do this. And so if no one's volunteering to do it, things stay in card catalogs, on microfiche, in boxes, and they don't get put out there digitally for researchers to be able to have access to. So we know that this is the case and that we're going to have to go there ourselves at some point and put our hands on all of these things and see what else there might be that we might be able to fill in some holes with.
Yeah. Good stuff. This is really good.
So we hope that this has given the listeners and the viewers a little bit more background on both of these women and what leads us to our conclusions about what we think might have happened.
Once again, this is all we're, theorizing, spitballing, just putting the facts that we know together. And by doing that, it helps you form a picture of something that happened in a time that has passed.
And that's all that we can work with is what we can dig. What can we dig up? And we have to sort of put the pieces together ourselves, since we aren't there to witness it ourselves, and people that might have been there to witness it aren't willing to talk. So it forces us to have to call it what you want, assumptions, suppositions, hypothesis, whatever theories, whatever you want to call it. We're forced to do that in order to keep this case moving forward, so we can examine every avenue.
Yeah, and I just want to find the truth.
And we're going to. We're coming
Because
for you.
The truth is out there.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
So this
All
has
right.
been a lot of fun. This was neat to sort of go back and recap, and I especially enjoyed hearing your response to that Alice's daughter gave birth to a stillborn baby that she named Kevin. I have a feeling maybe you weren't aware of that. Was that a surprise for you?
It was a surprise.
Yeah.
And I love learning new things. I love surprises.
So you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Not even my birthday. Not any of them.
And you have multiple ones to choose from. So
yeah, it's a good day.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us. This was a lot of fun, and we look forward to hearing your comments and your thoughts and everything that we've covered today.
Thanks for joining us for this special mini episode of the Fronczak Files. By walking through the timelines of Alice Swain and Lorraine Fountain, we're starting to see how their lives and choices may have overlapped with key moments in the mystery we're investigating. Every detail, every move, marriage, arrest, or change of address helps us piece together a clearer picture of what may have happened all those years ago.
We'll continue to explore these timelines and the connections they may hold to Jack's story in upcoming episodes. In the meantime, if you've uncovered any information, tips, or theories that might add to what we've shared today, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us through our website or email us directly at info@thefronczakfiles.com.
Stay tuned, because each puzzle piece brings us closer to uncovering the truth. We'll be dropping another mini episode on October 21st, where we will be answering listeners' questions and discussing their theories about Season 1.
We know our listeners miss us, and we miss you too. Join us on the 21st and get ready for the Season 2 premiere on October 28th.
Thanks again for tuning into the Fronczak Files. We'll see you next time.